Ina mana, ina iwi, ina reo, ina hau e wha, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for the opportunity. I've got 7.5 minutes. Always a pleasure to be between the taxi and the car park for you. So thank you. I'm going to do this in 3 parts. I'm going to provide a perspective on collaborative impact. Then I'm going to drop down a level and describe how cognition in our work applies to the notion of collaborative impact across the education, the youth development and the health sectors, and then I'm going to finish with one distinct and concrete example of how collaborative impact works in practice. Just for context, cognition works across those 3 sectors of education, health and youth development. Some of the types of clients that we work with are behind me and include some of the organisations represented here today. And we're interested in collaborative impact in so much as how do we get all of the players into a conversation that can make a difference to those who need it. So when I talk about collaborative impact, I'm saying how do we use big data to provide insight, and how do we use that insight to create tangible action. In doing so, how do we take a strengths-based approach rather than a deficit model? How do we identify therefore areas for development, areas that may require further investigation, and how can we apply this knowledge across the health, the education and the youth development sectors? So to do so, we've been working for several years on developing a big data analytics platform that takes data sets from those 3 areas. And it gives us spatial and temporal insights, which we then use within our consultancy practice to have conversations about how we can make a difference. And that's, I guess, what I'd like to talk to you about today in the next 4 or 5 minutes. So the data sets that we're working on, we've got around 350 million students in this from across the world. It involves the aggregation of around 70,000 studies, so it's a pretty big data set that we to bring to bear. And I'm just going to give you one example of one of those 70,000 studies because I thought it would be analogous to a conversation around the interface between health and education. One of the studies was from New Zealand, and we asked 15,000 secondary students, what makes a difference to your learning? When we asked the student, almost 80% of them said the thing that makes the biggest difference to my learning is the relationship that I have with my teacher. It's a little bit about the structure of the school, when we start and when we finish and when we go home, and it's a little bit about what I bring to my classroom. But predominantly it's about the relationship, and I think that's analogous in some sense to what happens in the health space. We asked their whānau, what do you think will make a difference to lifting the achievement of your son or daughter? And they also thought it was a relationship with their teacher, but the child and the structures became more important. Now, I appreciate many of you are parents and you see where this is going. We asked the principals, what do you think makes a difference? And there's the picture there. And then we asked the teachers. And I come from an education background predominantly. And this is 15,000 students of the 350 million odd, and they said, really, it's what that student brings into this classroom that makes a difference, and it's not the relationship that I have with that learner. So we started to think, if we combine this big study into one enormous study, and we could rank using qualitative and quantitative methodologies what makes a difference, wouldn't it be great then to go out into communities and try and do more of what works? Because in education and in health, there's not a lack of data, there's a lack of insight from that data and how we can make a difference with it. And what we found out in education was that 95% of what we do in education makes a difference. So if you're a parent and your teacher says, I'm making a difference, your student's moving on, that's a pretty low bar to set. The question is, how do we make the biggest difference, to whom and under what circumstances? So that's most of my rant gone. Now I'm going to give you a practical example of the interface between health and education. And the example I'm going to give you, it's only 3 minutes, is a little place called Te Ti, which is in the far north up past Kaikohe. And we work with the Ministry of Health and HPA and with schools and communities of schools. And we came across this story through doing a big data analytics. It was a strengths-based model, and we thought, this is a story worth telling. So I'm going to let them, in their own words, tell the story and then conclude with a minute after this video.
Kia ora, my name is Clayton Wikaira. I descend from Ngāpui. Today I'm going to talk about what I did as a health promoter, practitioner up in the far north. The approach I took aligned with the new health promoting schools framework alongside a community development approach. We looked at starting where the people were at and building on their strengths, ensuring that the change that was going to occur was going to be sustainable for their community. My job was to work with Northland priority communities. One we identified in a little place called Te Ti in the Bay of Islands. This was a low socioeconomic, isolated area. There was also a lack of available health services and a high level of unemployment, and predominantly were multi-population. I think it was important to begin where the community were at instead of imposing some health issues on them, that they were actually a part of identifying what were their needs and their priorities for their own community. So we looked at what their strengths were, and within that community they had a natural resource, which was the moana, and the locality was right on their back doorstep. They had a desire to use wakaama as a vehicle in promoting health within that area. So it was a holistic look at how they could reduce obesity, smoke-free, improve nutrition, and look at it and that being sustainable. We also wanted to look broader than wakaama just as the sport. So we looked at them utilising the waka to gather shellfish, set nets and go fishing off the canoes. One of their set goals to go down to the Wakaama Sprint Nationals in Adelaide Karapiro. So we put in training programs for the youth. At the start we just did a baseline measurement of their fitness, basically how far they can paddle in the session, and the majority of them were quite unfit when we first started. They could only do roughly 2 to 3k paddles, and then we measured that by the end of the 6 months. In the 1 year they were up around 15k to 20k paddles and paddling over an hour and a half in one go without stopping. The outcomes for us that have been really excellent is, one, 100% of our kids are smoke free to this date. They are a lot fitter and physically fit and more active, and they're also been national champs in the J16s for the last 2 years. Their parents fundraised for them to go to Rarotonga, and they went over there 2 years in a row and have won all the events over there in the last 2 years also.
So it's a great story, and an acknowledgement of looking for strengths where we can find them through the use of data. And it's nice to say as a postscript that they've now won the Worlds several times, and as a community the amount of pride that they take in those young people is tremendous, and it's had education being a determinant of health and vice versa. We're seeing some really positive tracking happening in the education space and in the community space and in the youth development space more generally. So I'll conclude with two brief points. The first is that when we did the large study of the 350 million students, the thing at the top of the list that makes the biggest difference to lifting student achievement is helping students see themselves as their own teacher, and helping teachers to see learning through the eyes of their students. I think that could be analogous in the health sector potentially if we use that thought. But secondly, it doesn't matter what technology it is and what data it is we use. It's about people, it's about people, it's about people, and putting the tools in their hands so that they can make a difference to their own lives and sustain that difference over time. Kia ora koutou, I appreciate you staying right to the end of the day, and I appreciate you spending some time with me. If I can talk to you outside of this context, I'd be happy to have that conversation. Kia ora koutou, travel safe.